Okay, so today we'll be reading chapter 19 of Bearstone. You can either watch this Edpuzzle and answer the questions that are in the Edpuzzle, or if you prefer reading the book on your own or in Bookshare listening to it, you can do that and then answer the focus questions, chapter 19, which will be posted on Schoology. So you don't have to do both. You can either watch this Edpuzzle and answer the questions in the Edpuzzle, or you can read the book by yourself, whether it's your paper copy or on Bookshare, and then answer these questions. So one or the other. But if you do choose to watch this Edpuzzle, I'm going to ask you to open up your Bookshare to chapter 19 or your paperback book to chapter 19. So we're going to start off where it says the hours of careful waiting. Before we read, though, let's do a little bit of a summary of what is happening. So we know that Rusty, the red-haired man, is going out on a bear hunt. He is going to go out and try and kill some bears. And Cloyd is chasing him down, trying to get the bear's attention to either scare it off or else to stop Rusty. So that's what's happening. So let's start reading chapter 19. The hours of careful waiting and watching ended as the tall white clouds turned dark and the wind began to blow. Cloyd glimpsed a figure moving swiftly for a low spot several miles up the basin. If it was the man on the track of the bear, it meant the bear had moved up the Rincon in the direction of the divide. Cloyd took off running. He avoided the meadows and tried to make time in the stands of timber and in the brush. He glimpsed the figure again, clearing the top of the divide, vanishing just as lightning struck up there. Apparently the outfitter had dropped his tracking and hurried up the ridge while Cloyd was in the brush. The man was tracking a risk climbing into the weather, Cloyd thought. He must be closing in on the bear. Page 130. Cloyd broke into the open and made for the place where the man went over the top. As he climbed, it began to sprinkle. He had no rain gear. He ran stumbling up the ridge and into the wind with no thought but that he had to reach the bear in time. So he's trying to reach the bear before Rusty can get to it. As he stood out on the divide, he found that the outfitter's straw cowboy hat waved the left in the plain sight as the sign for his brothers. Cloyd thought the man must be a little farther east on the divide and a little below it. He had to be. It was the only hidden place. If he'd gone down to the steep slope to the west, he'd be visible. The thunderstorm shower had passed by and the attacking pyramids. The thunderstorm shower had passed by and was attacking the pyramid. The day was waning now, and he knew he had to guess right. Yes, the outfitter had to be tucked out of sight on one of the small terraces, angling to the north and dropping like stairs down to the Ute Lake. The man and the bear must be about where he'd passed the day before, on his way up from the lake. Just in case the outfitter had somehow doubled back, Cloyd checked behind. His eye caught a flash of bright yellow. Riders in the rain slickers, 3 of them coming up the Rincon and leading a 4th horse. The brothers. He left the ridge line quickly. Cloyd found the highest terrace, but the man wasn't there. He ran its length, then crawled to the far edge to avoid being seen as he gained a vantage point. Below him lay another little meadow surrounded by the rock slides and brush. He made his way down to it among the rocks and ran for the far end, the wind blowing hard against him as he slowed down. When he dropped at the far end of the meadow to look below, he saw them on the next shelf. It was the bear he'd seen, a huge brown bear turning over the rocks above the mountain willow at the edge of the meadow, looking maybe for the pikas or the marmites. The outfitter was stalking in the crouch. He sneaked along the lime brush until he drew close to the bear on the other side. The man carried his bow with an arrow in place. The bear wasn't aware of him. Cloyd yelled with all of his might. Strangely, neither the bear nor the man paid any attention. The red-haired man drew close to the gap in the brush line. Cloyd screamed again and again, desperately, with no result. So why is Cloyd screaming right now? What is he trying to do to the bear or to Rusty? As close as they were, the bear and the man were deaf and unreachable, like phantoms in a dream. Then he realized that he was yelling from above and into a sturdy wind, and his voice was being blown away, up and behind him. Suddenly the tall man stood out in the open in front of the bear with the bow pulled all the way back and the arrow aimed. Sensing something, the bear stood up as if to have a better look and took the arrow right in its neck. So Rusty just shot the bear and it hit him right in the neck. The bear didn't fall. It roared in pain and charged the man through the opening in the brush with an uncanny speed. But the outfitter hadn't wasted any time knocking a second arrow and released it into the bear's chest. So now the bear has an arrow in its neck and in its chest. Still the bear came on, all teeth and claws and blood, and knocked aside the bow the man lifted to shield himself. As the man spun away, the bear hesitated, then stood up and tried to brush away the arrow shafts with its paw. The man crouched and brandished a long bladed knife. Returning to all fours, the bear took a few steps towards him. He gave a strange growl and collapsed on its side. So now we can answer question 1. What happened between Rusty and the bear? So what did Rusty just do to the bear, and what happened to the bear? The red-haired man circled the fallen bear several times. Then he knelt and ran his hand across the broad forehead. He inspected the teeth and underside of one of the front paws and sized the claws against his forefinger. So he's kind of sizing up the bear, seeing how big it is, and maybe seeing what kind of bear it is. So Cloyd fell to his belly in the cover of the rocks and let the bitterness roll over him in waves. He dreaded being seen by the outfitter now. That would make the man's victory complete. He'd gladly sink into the ground if he could. The uncaring wind shifted and carried the fragment of a shout from above and behind him. The others were coming, the brothers. He had to get out of there. He scuttled backwards until he was well away from the lip of the shelf, then stood and ran off the downhill side into the rocks onto the steep slope below. Above him, the riders crossed the spot he'd fled. So Cloyd just watched all of that happen, and now the outfitter, or Rusty, and all of his friends are going to check out the bear that Rusty just shot. There was whooping and shouting as the 3 men met up with their brother and the dead bear, but Cloyd couldn't see them, and he couldn't hear the outfitter's voice. He had to hear what the man would say. He worked his way through the talus until he was directly below them, then crept under the edge of the meadow where he could hear. "Biggest bear I ever saw," said one. "You win again." "You sure got the jump on us, Rusty, sneaking off in the night like that," said a second brother. "We came as soon as we saw your note. Hell of a bear. Did he charge you? How'd it go?" We're at the top of page 133 now. "Look at his forehead," the outfitter said, not so loud as the others. "What about it?" "It's dished out." "So?" "Look at the hump on its back, the forehead, the teeth, the claws. That's a grizzly." "Everybody knows there aren't grizzlies left in Colorado," the third brother protested. "Wasn't true. This here's a grizzly." "If you say so, you're the expert." "Well then, you've sure got yourself a trophy here, Rusty." "No, what I've got myself here is one heck of a mess." "What do you mean?" "It's illegal to kill a grizzly bear. They're protected. $100,000 fine and a year in jail." "So? You didn't know it was a grizzly, did you?" "It crossed my mind. I couldn't tell you for sure until it was up close. It charged me. I had to defend myself. That's a lie, Cloyd thought. That's not how it happened. Well, who's to know? One of the brothers snapped. Ain't nobody's business but yours. I got carried away. All right, let's pause right there and let's go back and let's answer a couple more of our questions. So, why was Rusty so upset that he killed the grizzly bear? Well, what's going to happen to Rusty since he killed a grizzly bear and it's illegal? He said he's going to have to pay something and maybe spend some time somewhere. And then question 3, what lie did Rusty tell his friends? So what lie did Rusty tell his friends? Did he tell him that maybe the bear was eating grass and he snuck up on it and shot it? So what lie did Rusty tell his friends? All right, let's get back reading. Well, who's to know? One of the brothers snapped. Ain't nobody's business but yours. I got carried away. There was a pause. Then Cloyd heard the red-haired man's voice fill with what almost seemed like regret. It's probably one of the 2 cubs that were reported around the pyramid 10 or 12 years ago. Look, Rusty, the same brother said. Quit worrying. You made a terrific kill here, and it'll make a once-in-a-lifetime trophy. You guys think I can go ahead and display it in my home? We're on top of page 134 now, right where it says show. Show it to the game warden when he comes over to visit. I see your point. You've got a problem here, don't you? How about I just take it back to Texas with me? Let's skin it out right now. I don't know, Andy. I could lose my license over this. That's my livelihood we're talking about. Even if a grizzly's found dead, you're supposed to report it as soon as you can, so to the Department of Wildlife Scientists, guys can study it. So right now, Rusty's starting to realize that he made a mistake by killing this illegal bear because he has to report the bear to the game warden, and there's no way the game warden won't know that it's a grizzly bear. So right here where it says, come on, we'll pack the skin out good and careful. No one will ever see it. Tell you what, I'll give you $1,000 for it. Make it worth your while. I'd really like to have that monster baring his teeth on the floor in front of the fireplace. Look at the size of those claws. From what you're saying, if you do report this thing, there's no way they aren't going to take it away from you. Then what? If they don't like your story, you'll end up without the bear and in big trouble both. We'd have to leave the carcass, Andy. Backpackers would come across it and report it. The bone structure would identify it as a grizzly. Sam Perkins, the game warden. He knows we're up here. I'd never get away with it. Besides, he's a good friend. The more I think about this, the more I'm convinced the only way I'm going to come out of all this deal is to get a hold of Sam right away. And Sam's the game warden. He's going to want to bring in the department helicopter and lift this grizzly out as soon as possible before it starts to spoil. So let's get down to the guard station and radio this in. It's a hell of a shame. Sure is, the outfitter agreed, but I'm not going to risk my business over it. After the men were gone, Cloyd approached the bear. Kneeling close to its massive head, Cloyd asked for the bear's forgiveness. He prayed that somehow this bear wasn't the last one. Hadn't there been 2 cubs? Maybe there are others that nobody knows about. Overcome with grief, he stayed into the darkness. Cloyd vowed that the mighty grizzly, that he would remember him forever, not lifeless like now, but standing tall and alert, sniffing the wind, still the most powerful animal in the mountains. As he fled down the Rincon Trail, the night was full of accusing voices. A large owl suddenly flapped out of the dark and almost struck him. He yelled sharply in terror. His grandmother had told him about owls. This one would be the dead bear's spirit freshly loosed from its body. And that is the end of chapter 20. Let's go back here and let's answer our last two questions. So why did Rusty have to tell the game warden? Well, what was going to happen to Rusty if the game warden found out? So why did Rusty have to tell the game warden he shot the grizzly bear? And then number 5, was Rusty telling the game warden because he knew it was the right thing to do, or because he knew he would eventually get caught if he did not? All right. So that is the end of chapter 19, and check back later this week for chapter 20.